Could the Mets actually pull off a trade for Nolan Arenado?
The Mets are the world champions.
What is up, you guys? I am Anthony Metro. Welcome to the video. Today, I am going to be discussing what a potential trade between the Colorado Rockies and the New York Mets would look like that would potentially send all-star third baseman Nolan Arenado to Queens. Before we get started, please be sure to give this video a like if you enjoy this content and subscribe to my channel. Also look out for me on Spotify as well as anywhere else where you listen to your favorite podcasts for the Anthony Metro podcast, where I cover all the latest news, rumors, highlights, and updates regarding Major League Baseball and the New York Mets. So far this offseason, we have heard about a number of all-star and superstar players that might be on the trade market, from Mookie Betts to Francisco Lindor and Chris Bryant. But no one is more appealing to me, at least as a Mets fan, than third baseman Nolan Arenado. Why would the Rockies want to trade a 5-time All-Star, a 7-time Gold Glover, someone that is a top 10 OPS bat every single season, year in and year out? Well, I think it's necessary that I do say the Rockies are in no rush to trade Nolan Arenado. However, Jon Morosi and Ken Rosenthal have both insinuated that the Rockies are at least gauging interest from around the league to try and find the trade value for Arenado. In fact, Morosi even tweeted on January 2nd that there is a 50-50 chance that Arenado is traded this offseason. So while the Rockies are in no rush to trade Arenado, they are at least listening, and if the right deal presented itself, it seems they might actually pull the trigger. So today, I'm going to tell you how the New York Mets and the Colorado Rockies could come to a deal and make the trade work. First, let's examine Nolan Arenado. He'll be entering his age 29 season in 2020, and over the last 5 years, he's been named an All-Star, averaging just a modest 40 home runs, 124 RBIs, and 937 OPS. Pretty easy light work, right? This doesn't even begin to touch on the fact that he's averaged a 6.1 WAR since 2015. As far as how he stacks up against his peers, Arenado is a top 10 player in almost every offensive category, from OPS to home runs to RBIs, traditional or new metrics. It doesn't matter, take your pick. Arenado is going to be among the upper echelon in the National League. This all without even describing what an incredible defender that he is. Since 2015, he's averaging nearly 13 defensive runs saved per season. As I mentioned, he's been awarded 7 Gold Gloves in his career. And that doesn't even begin to mention that he's actually been awarded 3 Platinum Gloves. In the 2019 offseason, Arenado was awarded like the elite superstar he is, with an 8-year, $260 million contract from the Colorado Rockies. At the time, it was the highest among any position player in the history of baseball. This is where trade talks for Arenado may hit a bit of a speed bump for teams that are interested. Arenado will be getting $35 million each year from 2020 to 2024. In 2025, he'll be making $32 million. And at the age of 35 in 2026, he'll be making $27 million. But talks about a trade might hit an even bigger snag in the fact that Arenado actually has an opt-out after the 2021 season, meaning teams might only actually be getting Arenado's services for 2 years. So while Arenado is deserving of every bit of that contract, it may make things a little bit difficult to come up with a fair trade, given that he has his opt-out, a no-trade clause, and the amount of prospect capital that it will cost the team in addition to the amount of money that he's due in his salary. With all that being said, I'm going to come up with a trade that will work for both the New York Mets and the Colorado Rockies to satisfy both teams. I will be using the help of baseballtradevalues.com, a website that assigns trade value to each organization's players. I will put a link to that website in the description below if you guys would like to try and make your own trades. So given that the Mets of course have budget constraints, please hurry up, Steve Cohen. The Mets are going to have to pay up in player or prospect capital. There's really no way around it. I don't foresee the Mets taking on all of that contract, even with the possible infusion of Cohen's money coming up very soon. The issue is the Mets don't have a particularly deep farm system at the moment, and that may make pulling off a trade like this difficult. With that being said, the hypothetical trade that I'm going to lay out for you is going to be under 3 different parameters. Number 1, the Mets are not willing or able to pay the entirety of Nolan Arenado's contract. Number 2, the Rockies do not have to trade Nolan Arenado for at least another 1.5 years if they don't want to. They also have other suitors who have much better farm systems than the Mets. And number 3, the Mets are able to find a way and negotiate so that Nolan Arenado will get rid of the opt-out in his contract. Without any further ado, let's get started. Leading off, it's going to have to be third baseman Brett Beatty. Now I know a lot of you may turn off the video immediately after this. The 6'3" left-handed hitting third baseman who was drafted out of high school in the first round last year in the 2019 draft has got a lot of Mets fans extremely excited, and for good reason. He prospects to have extremely good power to all parts of the field, left, right, center, home run power. He also has a very patient and advanced approach at the plate that allows him to take his walks. This guy is so athletic that they actually said that if he had continued to play football in high school, he might have been playing D1 quarterback next year. They also say, for whatever it's worth, he can dunk a basketball. His pro sample size was small, with 5 games in the Gulf Coast League, 42, and then 5 more in Brooklyn. In that time, he did hit 7 home runs, and he did get an OPS of 821, showing off his ability to walk. In my opinion, Beatty has the potential to be an all-star 30 to 35 home run hitter. Beatty is currently rated as the number 3 prospect in the Mets farm system, and he is slated to begin his season in 2020 in Low A Columbia. And I believe in a Nolan Arenado trade that he could be the headliner. Joining him in the trade, unfortunately, it is going to have to be fellow 2019 draftee Matt Allen. Allen actually was slotted as a first-round pick in the 2019 draft. However, he priced himself at $4 million, which made a lot of teams fear they would be unable to sign him. This allowed Allen to fall to the Mets in the 3rd round, and in an untraditional method, the Mets successfully signed Allen to a $3 million deal. Allen boasts a fastball between 93 and 96 miles per hour consistently. It is a plus pitch. It even touched 97. His curveball is listed as a pitch with plus potential, thanks in large part to its consistent spin rate. Scouts feel that Allen has the potential to be a number 2 pitcher in an MLB rotation in the future. And the last person going to the Colorado Rockies in this trade is going to be first baseman and left fielder Dom Smith. Smith was highly touted for his ability to hit for average, get on base, field the first base position well, and eventually grow into his power and be able to hit for 30 home runs in a season. However, Dom Smith had an uneven start to his professional career. At each stop in the minors, Smith was known as a notorious slow starter. Now, to be fair, Dom Smith was 2.5 to 5 years younger at each minor league level. But his sluggish starts and inability to develop big league power became concerning. Smith's highest single season home run total was 16 in AAA Las Vegas as part of the Pacific Coast League, notorious for inflating offensive numbers. Add to the fact that Smith struggled with his weight and with injuries throughout his career, and it was easy to see why fans and scouts alike started to sour on Smith. He made his pro debut with the Mets in 2017 and hit 9 home runs in 49 games, but hit for only a 198 average and 255 on base percentage. In 2018, Smith split time between AAA Las Vegas and the Mets, and in 141 games, hit just 11 home runs, hit for a 224 average and 255 on base percentage. Needless to say, Smith's time to cement himself as the future first baseman for the Mets was dwindling, especially with future game participant Pete Alonso looming. Fast forward to spring training, and a new, lighter Dom Smith came into camp. Smith said that at his heaviest he was 260 pounds, and at the time of that interview that he was weighing in at 216. But how did this translate to his performance on the field? In 2019, Smith had the most complete season of his career. He slashed 282, 355, and slugged 525. Good for an 851 OPS. He hit 11 home runs in 197 plate appearances. He spent more time in left field with Pete Alonso taking over first base for the Mets. And he improved out there as well, most likely thanks to his newfound athleticism and agility. Smith cut down his strikeout rate from 28% to 22% and increased his walk rate from 5.4% to 9.2%. What was particularly useful for the Mets was his ability to be a pinch hit threat, as he hit 286 in 37 pinch hit appearances. One thing still ailing Smith, of course, is the fact he missed quite a bit of the 2019 season due to injury. It's still something that Smith will have to work on if he ever wants to be considered a major cog for a big league ball club. Other than that, it was clearly a huge step forward for Dom Smith in 2019. So, as I mentioned, I wanted to work out this trade with baseballtradevalues.com, and I wanted to do it under the 3 parameters that I mentioned before. Number 1, the Mets are not going to be willing or able to take on all of Arenado's contract. Number 2, the Rockies do not need to trade Arenado at least for another 1.5 years, and they have other suitors for Arenado who have better farm systems than the Mets. And number 3, Nolan Arenado would be willing to waive his 2021 opt-out for the Mets. So, here are the assigned trade values for each of the players that we mentioned. Nolan Arenado comes in at a 27.7. Brett Beatty comes in at an 18. Matt Allen comes in at a 9.3. And Dom Smith comes in at a 9.2. The Rockies are going to have to send back the Mets some cash considering that they're giving them 2 of their top 5 prospects. After we add the 8 MTV market value that is assigned from tradevalues.com, this evens out for the trade. The Mets would be receiving a 35.7 trade value, and the Rockies would be receiving a 35.5 trade value. The Mets get Nolan Arenado, an elite superstar third baseman, one of the best in the league on offense and defense. Meanwhile, the Rockies get a potential future all-star third baseman in Beatty, a potential future top of the rotation pitcher in Matt Allen, and their starting first baseman for the next 5 years in Dom Smith. Don't get me wrong, I know this is a steep trade for the Mets. 2 of their top 5 prospects after we just got gutted last year by the Mariners. But Nolan Arenado is the franchise for the Rockies. He is arguably their greatest player along with Todd Helton, and he may have even surpassed him at this point. They just extended him to a mega contract, and now all of a sudden they're just going to pull the rug out from under him. I know a lot of Mets fans are saying, well, let's throw them David Peterson or Andres Gimenez. Well, David Peterson is projecting, if he's lucky, as a back of the rotation starter, and Andres Gimenez may not even have a bat as good as Ruben Tejada. I just can't see the Rockies trading away Arenado for anything less than 2 extremely big blue chip prospects, which is why I had to put Beatty and Matt Allen in the deal. I also don't see them being very interested in 2 years left for Steven Matz, who has his occasional meltdowns. I don't see that going very well for him in Colorado, and I also don't see them being interested in Michael Conforto with only 2 years remaining on his contract. So baseballtradevalues.com gave me the thumbs up. They said that this trade would actually work according to their analysis. But is this a good trade for the Mets? And if I was their GM, would I do it? No, I would not do this trade. Look, I had to create something that I thought was realistic for both sides. I don't like to do the MLB The Show trades where you could just add a bunch of names and then hope that it gets done. Look, I have for years begged the Mets and Mets fans to stop prospect hugging and try to go out and get an elite superstar or at least an all-star via trade. However, at this current juncture, I just don't think it's a good trade, and there are a couple of reasons why. Number one, there is so much uncertainty with Nolan Arenado's contract. Will Arenado even be willing to drop that opt-out? And even if he was, is it possible? Number two, we know the Rockies don't have to trade Arenado this offseason, and in my opinion, I don't think they will. They have at minimum 1.5 years to trade him. They could trade him anytime this year and up to this year's deadline. They could wait and do it next offseason. They could even wait until the 2021 deadline to do it if they do think he's going to opt out. And number three, simply put, I just don't think it's a good use of the Mets' resources. First of all, if the Mets really wanted an elite third baseman, they could have just signed Anthony Rendon without giving up any players or prospects. Secondly, with the possible infusion of Steve Cohen's money and some big name free agents coming up on the horizon, I'd much rather the Mets stay put with their player and prospect capital and hope we can get that cash inflow and put it toward Mookie Betts next year, or Francisco Lindor in 2 years. Or who knows, maybe even Nolan Arenado in 2 years. So there you have it, guys. I tried my best to create a trade that I thought would work for both teams. Let me know your guys' thoughts. Comment below. Try the trade simulator out. How do you guys feel about the Mets making a trade for Nolan Arenado? Did you like the one that I came up with? Do you at least think that it was a good and fair deal for both teams given the parameters that I laid out? Don't forget to hit subscribe and like this video if you enjoy this content, and be sure to subscribe to my podcast as well. I am Anthony Metro. Thank you for watching. Let's go Mets.